Yo, and hello, and I have the very first volume of DanDaDan. I read this all already, and I reviewed it afterwards, and I got a few ideas and some observations I'm going to show you. So it's going to be some really interesting stuff going on in here. So I'll start off with the plot. So we have our two main characters. We have Momo Ayase and Ken. And Ken likes he's kind of into UFOs or yeah, like UFOs or what does he say? He says unidentified aerial phenomenon UAPS, and Momoyase, she's actually kind of into spirits and some of the more occult stuff, because her grandmother's actually a medium. So the story starts off is that Momo just kind of broke up with like her previous boyfriend, and he's kind of a scumbag, and all he really wants from her is her to put out, and I don't know, she seems like she's not all about that. Plus she doesn't seem to have a whole lot of money, so he's just like, fine, whatever, I'm out of here. He's like, whatever, I don't care. Then we're done. And she goes to her friends and talks about it. But then she notices, she's talking about like maybe why was she in the guy? She likes guys that look like Ken Takakura. But she notices our main character, or our other main character, being bullied. And so she kind of steps in just to kind of stop the bullying. And then she just kind of walks away like it wasn't a really big deal. But this is where our other main character kind of makes his move and says, yo, I know you're into spiritual, supernatural stuff. I'm into UFOs and stuff. And all she can think about this whole time is like, oh, she's heartbroken. She just broke up. She's still trying to get over that. But they do kind of find a little bit of common ground in that. Like she talks about how she was made fun of for having to do her little rituals while walking to school and stuff like that. And Ken is also kind of bullied too, like that. So they got a little more in common. So I think it just starts off as like an argument of like, no way, that stuff isn't real. Your stuff isn't real. That's ridiculous. Well, yeah. Well, if they can prove it to each other, then they kind of make a bet about it, I think. So that's kind of how the main premise kind of kicks off, is that they get each other to go look for their respective entities. So that seems like the very same night she goes out. Almost immediately, they both stumble upon some crazy stuff. So at first, like, oh, this is just an old lady, but like, no, she's actually like the spirit that lives in this tunnel, and she immediately runs into these weird alien dudes. So they end up going on those like, so kind of wacky, weird shit starts to happen to them, and that's kind of like the loop of the story, is that, and they kind of encounter more of those entities like that, or they learn how to deal with them. And there's, when it comes to the combating the aliens and the spirits, there's actually always a good logic to it, because if you know anything about like Japanese folklore and spirits and stuff, or if you know anything about UFO phenomenon, there's like a little bit, they use the lore of that's already kind of established in our culture, and they kind of like everything, the way they take care of it. So like later on, there's the witch, the lady spirit, and they have to challenge her to something, because if they can make a challenge and win, then they can defeat her. But obviously, when they do go to challenge, the spirit lady kind of fudges the rules and kind of cheats, but still stays within the boundaries of the rules that were set. So like you try to they try to one up each other every time they seemingly do prevail for the most part. And that's kind of the structure of the story. To start off back at the beginning, kind of, and point out some of my observations. So like the very first thing we see is, of course, her breaking up with her boyfriend, and all he really wants from her is for her to put out. And then as soon as she runs into her first set of aliens, they just want to use her to reproduce, and there's similarities there, that like maybe that's kind of what her how. So the way I'm interpreting like the entities in this series isn't like literal, but like it's kind of like it's connected to the main characters a little bit more. So when we go to Ken, he seems like he's kind of downtrodden. He doesn't really know if if I can find a good panel again. If maybe he doesn't really see himself as a valuable person or a man or anything like that, and that's why he says he's into UFOs, because he's just kind of he said he's looking for friends. He's like, I look for UFOs because maybe they'll be friendly or something like that, because he's really lonely. And when he encounters Turbo Granny. So yeah, when he encounters Turbo Granny, she literally takes away his manhood. So there's those similarities there with how the characters are introduced, and then the very first entities that they kind of run into. And when Ken is cursed by Turbo Granny, So part of the curse that Turbo Granny puts on him, he just gets he gets to turn into this monster, and it gives him like really, he turns him really powerful. I kind of forgot the particulars about like what exactly the reasoning, but he gets these powers, and it's kind of how the combat takes place. Is that she gets her kind of more mystical powers like her grandmother has, and then Ken kind of gets the powers of Turbo Granny, so he gets really fast, really powerful, and they kind of deal with the aliens right at the beginning. And so there's these little quick emotional moments, and it's kind of like the most important part of the story is when they do defeat these entities, that they have these little interludes. So they come away, they both believe in each other's respective spirits and aliens. And then it's revealed here that his name is actually Ken Takakura as well. So either that's a coincidence. Our main character Ken has the same name as the celebrity she has a crush on. So there's a parallel there, but maybe I feel like in this story coincidences should be taken less of as coincidences and more of like maybe he's literally that same guy, because in this type of story a lot of stuff could be possible. So but also hints that maybe Ken here is our like perfect man for a girl like for Momo Ayase, since that's the kind of guy she says she's really into, and then it turns out that this kid's literally the name of someone else she's like also really into. But part of his curse is that Turbo Granny stole his manhood, literally, and if she takes her eyes off of him, she has to concentrate, pretty much just like in D&D, where she has to use concentration to suppress him turning back into the Eternal Granny spirit curse. So he can stay normal as long as she's concentrating. Pretty much has to stay eye contact with him. I'm not sure like what exactly that might implicate. The idea that someone has to stay looking at someone else, or else like the curse manifests itself. But in this case, it just kind of reinforces like the subtle romantic messaging so far. And this is kind of the most. This is the page I had to keep track of. So when they're in this, about not quite halfway through to the manga, but they're not currently dealing with Turbo Granny at the moment, but they're starting to get ready for it. He kind of explains like why I've. So yeah, this just kind of explains how lonely he is and how desperate he was to talk to her, and just he knew that she believed in spirits, so he kind of reached out to her that way to get kind of that conversation going, to introduce himself to like. But then he's like kind of deeply sorry that he kind of mixed her up and all this stuff, even though everything that's happening is extremely ridiculous, and I don't necessarily take everything at face value, but it's a goofy story for a reason. But she's like, oh, we can still just hang out, we can just talk about fun stuff no matter what, it doesn't matter. So like she's actually willing to kind of stay his friend and stuff. He's he was scared that after all this danger that she would just leave him, or not want to be friends with him anymore. But she seems like she's actually pretty cool with it, so that's kind of awesome. And then they have this another encounter, and like it gets more into her powers at this point, because she has her like spirit medium powers, so they actually get to more directly team up in this fight. So I think that's the most of my observations so far in this single volume, is that she's kind of desperately looking for someone that's right for her and sees her more than just as an object, and he really just wants to have a friend and someone that that he can like talk to and be friends with and hang out with, and so now they're kind of intertwined in this journey they have to go through. His affliction of losing his manhood to Turbo Granny, because she literally gobbled it up. He feels like he is like maybe less of a man and not worthy of anyone's time, and she feels like no one actually really cares about her. So maybe when she sees that Ken actually has interest in her beyond her body, like there's actually like a connection there, and vice versa. There's actually a healthy relationship going on here. And I think that's the meat and bones of what DanDaDan's about so far. It's not just about like, oh, they a lot of people they read the action bits and they go, oh, that's what it's about. It's about they go in these fights and they fight monsters and it's really goofy, and it's like but like that's what the story's really about. So we'll see what's up. I'll try reading volume 2 as soon as it comes out, and I'll see where these stories go. But I think that's like for the most part like what's happening. I didn't want to spoil the more of the back half of the story. I just wanted to get you the premise down, and then let the if you actually want to read it, let the back half be going as blind as possible. So those are my thoughts for the most part on DanDaDan. So yeah, if you have read in further volumes, let me know if you spotted those themes, like if they keep going developing. But I'll let you know when I read volume 2 myself. So yeah, see you then.